Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final Mike Ames Recruitment Show of this year, where we are going to be talking about something that I know a lot of people are interested in, particularly thinking about all the things that could happen next year, and that is using offshore resource for beginners. Now, Mike, this is something that you really wanted us to talk about, isn't it?
100%. I mean, the whole point of inviting Ketan on here, and I'll do a proper introduction in a minute for him, is that in the modern world, particularly in the factory model that we promote, I think you can't ignore offshore. At least you need to know about it. You need to understand how it works and to be able to judge whether it works for you or not. You can't just shut it out as being a thing that you can't do. Why? Well, because it's more agile. I think, as you'll see, there's more value for money from it. And if I can cut to the quick, it's cheaper, right? So you can get more people and they don't cost as much and they stay longer. So really, it's something you cannot ignore, particularly if you want to grow a very profitable business. And so I've invited Ketan on. Welcome to the show, Ketan.
Thanks, Mike.
Just to give you a bit of background on him, or you can Google him, obviously, or look him up on LinkedIn. Ketan is the founder and MD of RPO Arena, which is his own firm, obviously. But before that, he's worked in the industry for 20 years, namely for two really big outsourced companies, and he's been instrumental in building those businesses up, and he's doing it for himself now. But the reason I've invited him on is he's a great guy. He does not salesy, not pushy, and he will tell it the way it is, which is what I really like. So welcome to the show, Ketan. Delighted to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate the opportunity.
Fine. Well, we're the lucky ones, I think, here, Ketan, because we are going to milk you for all the knowledge that we can. So as we're going to go through, I'm going to kick this off in a second. If you do have any questions for Ketan, please feel free to pop them in the comments and I'll bring them up as we go through. So I think a good place to start, Ketan, is I feel like I know a lot of people, a lot of business owners, especially in recruitment, who've tried offshoring and it hasn't worked. So can we talk about why commonly utilizing an offshore resource doesn't work if you've done it before?
Sure. So let me take a step back and talk about what model most of the agencies in the UK are privy with, which is a CV sourcing model, where an RPO reaches out to, or the agency reaches out to the RPO. I need help with sourcing. Here are some vacancies. Send me some CVs, which from my perspective is very transactional. And because there is no equity, there's no relationship, between the business or the person working on your account. So anything which is transactional, number one, is bound to fail, because there is no relationship there. So it all sort of, starts with the objective. What is your objective of outsourcing? That's one. And then two is, ensuring that, are you ready to invest that time and effort in building the relationship? Again, going back to my experiences, if somebody's just looking for, CVs to build the database, then the expectations should be very clear from day one that I'm going to get 50 CVs, across 10 job boards that they have, and, probably 5 are going to be relevant. So I should be happy with that.
I think this is interesting because another reason I wanted you to come on the show and talk about this is a number of my clients have tried it or given it a go, and it hasn't worked out. And I think what you've just encapsulated there in a few sentences is the reason why. They saw it as an arm's length service, that they could almost, like a light switch, you can turn it on or you can turn it off. And whilst there are plenty of RPO companies that sell that, it's never going to be massively effective, is it? It's never really going to work and show great results.
Well, and then why it works, when you recruit somebody internally, onshore, because someone's working for you dedicatedly, for 8.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. They are part of your team. You're investing that time and effort in building that relationship with that person, and then them understanding about your business, how you operate. So, that's a very crucial part of making this work. And then if you don't have time to train them, if you don't have time to transfer the knowledge, give feedback, you're not going to be happy, and then it's not going to work out.
Yeah. I think that if you want to get the gains from it, you kind of have to throw yourself in, don't you? You have to treat people. I know we'll talk about this a little later, but you have to treat people as though they were like your team. They just happen to sit several miles away in Bangalore or wherever it is. They're just team members. And if you view it in that way, then you're not going to go too far adrift, really, are you?
Not at all. They're your team, and one of the biggest sort of success that we've seen across the board, over the last 2 decades, where this model has worked, is where every client treated their offshore team member exactly like their onshore teams. So right from engaging them on an average day, recognizing them, rewarding them, giving feedback, good, bad, ugly, because they're a part of your value chain. At the end of the day, they have an impact in the business, and they want to know what impact are they having.
Yeah, we've got a really great comment here as well, I think, from Amar, where he says, great point, it's definitely a long-term commitment to the full extent of the word. You need to see it as a partnership and not just a transaction.
Yeah.
I really like that, because I know we spoke in the pre-Ketan about it shouldn't be transactional. This is a part of your team that you're creating. And you also mentioned earlier about having a champion as well. Like, very often people won't have a champion when it comes to this.
Well, why you need a champion? Because one is, for most of the agencies who will outsource, it's probably going to be the first time for them. And then because, out of sight, out of mind, you don't know, how things are sort of being conducted offshore. You don't see them in the happening. So, and then when there are teething concerns, if you don't have a champion, you'd say, what, it's not working. Let's just pull the plug. And it happens once or twice, and you'll say, it's not for me. I'm not going to give enough time, and I'll just go back to recruiting somebody onshore or do it differently. But you have to be having that mindset that it's a change, it's a big step for you. You will have these concerns, and which is exactly what I do when I talk to the clients, that here are 10 things that will happen in the transition, in the first 3 months, and then you should be ready to sort of adapt and then support the offshore team member, because that's where they'll generate the confidence, and then make them feel as a part of the team that yes, mistake happens. This is how you sort of proceed from here on.
Okay, fantastic. Now, in a second, I do want to come a little bit more about how we would sort of manage our offshore team. But before then, people who are watching this who've never used offshore resourcing, what kind of things as a business owner could I utilize an offshore team for? Because there's a lot going on in a business. So what part of that do you think I could kind of give out?
Well, so practically you can run an agency from offshore. You've seen more than a couple of situations, agencies doing that. So we work on, offshore RPOs work on almost every activity within the recruiting life cycle that does not require a warm handshake. So right from your most simplest task of posting jobs to actually 180, delivery model, which is the factory model essentially. So you want to start with sourcing an activity which is low risk. You want to sort of go all in, with sourcing, with anything which is admin, which is not going to sort of impact directly with your audience or your target market.
I think this is interesting, actually, if I can just pick up on this, because as I said, I have clients that use it, and you're right, you can use it for lots of things. In my own company, we have an FD who's offshore. Well, he's actually a financial controller, but point taken. And we also have an administrator who's just a marketing administrator, does a lot of the marketing things and data things. Both of them are offshore. They're in different countries. One's in the Philippines, the other one's in India. So you don't just have to do resourcing, do you? You can use it for a wide range of things if it suits your business model.
Absolutely, and this is exactly where it links back to your number one question. Where it fails or how to make it successful is you scope out. Where do you need help? Of course, if you need help with just basic admin, then there's talent available here who can help you with admin. And if there's a combination of sourcing plus admin, there's talent available for that as well. So it's really down to you in terms of what is that 80% of work that you want your offshore team members to work on.
Yeah. I just, by the way, I think we're having a few difficulties with some people on LinkedIn. Kirsty can just put the YouTube link in the comments, so you can hop across and watch it on YouTube if you want. If that's going to be any better for you. Just coming back to this point of sourcing, though. So you've got level 1 resourcer, level 2. Level 1's a finder. Level 2 is a qualifier. Level 1 can just operate with the internet and obviously email. Level 2 have to be able to pick up the telephone or use video conferencing or whatever. The easiest way to start, in my experience, I'd like to know what you think, bring you in on this really, Ketan, obviously, because you're the expert, but the The easiest way to start, I think, is with that level 1 resourcer. Go and find some CVs. Invest in people so they understand what you're looking for. Work with them. The term that I've heard bandied around is triage. So you give someone a vacancy, and rather than coming back with 10 CVs, just come back with 3. And I'll work through with you to make sure they're the right CVs, as opposed to kind of going ahead and doing it. But whether you triage or whether you just say, go and get me some CVs, it's that lower level that's the easiest way to start, isn't it? The most risk-free probably as well, I would think.
Absolutely. And you know, that's the part of a phased training process. You know, that's how, you know, we put it. So every staff or every resourcer that comes on board has the capability to engage with the candidates. So, you know, good English communication skills and at least, you know, 9 to 12 months of recruiting experience is what they would have, you know, working for the UK or the US region. So that come with that exposure. You know, you don't have to train them on what is Boolean search or how to use LinkedIn or how to talk to the candidates. So, but however, taking a cue from all the successes that we've seen over the years, is clients phase it out, like you mentioned, Mike. That let's start with level 1. Here's benchmark CVs that we have sourced for these roles. Study them, and here's the vacancy. Now go and find, you know, more CVs like these, top 3, top 5, with your commentary that why do you believe that, you know, these are the ones which are right, and then why should we sort of contact them?
These guys are smart guys, aren't they? Many of them are degree educated people. They're clever people, aren't they?
Most of them are graduates, by minimum.
So they can learn. They can learn that, you know, you're talking to intelligent people that can learn. If they do something that isn't what you want, and you say, oh well, that's not quite right, this is what it should be, they'll kind of absorb that and learn that. I mean, these are clever people.
So they're very agile, you know, when it comes to feedback, and you know, we are hungry for feedback. You know, the offshore team members, if there was one sort of complaint in this relationship that the offshore teams would have, is the feedback and engagement. That you know, I'm waiting for my, you know, onshore counterpart to come back to me on the CVs that I've sourced or candidates I've sort of put forward. What's really happening? Good, bad, ugly. That's all I want to know. And then, you know, that's where you tie in the SLAs of for the onshore team. You know, if you got a large team managing the relationship, that yes, you know, if the offshore team members have sent across CVs to be put forward, you know, you're supposed to go back to them in 2 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. It's up to you, but you have to have those SLAs, you know, to make this work.
I think that comes back to having a champion in the UK as well, someone who effectively owns that relationship. So they can not only be very supportive of the onshore people, but also the offshore people too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that leads really nicely, and we sort of briefly discussed it there, but I just sort of want to call it out as I'm now, let's say I'm a business owner, I'm using an offshore resourcer. How can I, as a business owner who needs certain things happening for me, I'm going to need my clients to be happy. How do I use an offshore, you know, how do I measure it, but also keep, like you say, keep my offshore team happy? How am I supposed to sort of measure and manage the RPO?
I would start by looking internally in terms of the measurements. So, you know, I would start with, if I induct somebody, you know, onshore who's totally new or a rookie, what process would I take them through? So starting with the induction, then, you know, what kind of learning curve would they have? So essentially a sliding scale KPI for the first 12 weeks, alongside the dependencies that they would have to deliver those numbers. So, you know, what you're essentially looking at is as being an enabler for them to be successful. And then that's how, you know, they sort of put the KPIs into picture. And then 2 is, you know, how do I manage? Now, there are 2 ways to managing. One is, you know, the offshore teams, they have a management structure in place where, you know, they handhold the person in terms of, you know, working with the client on an average day, conduct those weekly reviews, monthly reviews, engage with the onshore counterpart, going through the reviews. And then so that's one part of the performance management. On a day-to-day basis, they would actually, you know, or you should actually have a day plan for your offshore team members, for them to sort of report into you, you know, at the end of the day or start of the day, you know, early morning. Participate in the morning meetings like these, or a phone call, talking through the priorities for the day, that here are 3 jobs I'm going to be working on, or you're going to be working on. This was the pipeline of candidates from yesterday. This is the feedback. let's crack on, and then engage on as and when needed basis, because everybody works on Teams now remotely, or Zoom, or set up a VoIP phone, and so they're the first hand contact, and then they communicate with you, or you call them when you need them to.
I've got one of my clients is effectively a one-man band, in the sense that he's at the top of the triangle. He gets all the biggest search client, and he has 3 people offshore and a couple of people onshore, so they all support him really. And he has daily meetings. Every single morning he has a meeting with his offshore team to schedule and prioritize work for the day, and to review what was done yesterday, every single day. And if he can't do it, one of his team does it. And he says that he was struggling a bit really to make it work, and he said the turning point was that. And as you say, it's kind of like you would do with your own people, I suppose, isn't it? Is to kind of reprioritize every day and focus, and especially more junior people, you would with resources that can work on lots of different assignments, to give them the assignment that they've got to work on, and then review what they've done. It just makes perfect sense to me.
Totally. And then you also have to understand that, yes, because it's offshore, because the person is not in front of you, you also have that feeling that I'm missing that association of somebody sat beside me, which is a fact. And it happens because it's normal human behavior to need that engagement. And that's where the morning meetings, weekly meetings are important. That, okay, fine, what did we achieve for the week as a person, as an offshore team member and as a team? So let's celebrate our wins. And that's exactly what our clients have, and then what we've seen in the relationships in the past, that you invest in them from this time perspective, and recognize them in every meeting that you have where possible, just like you do with your team members. And then by that, you also give them feedback, good, bad, ugly, as we call them in offshore. They have to know that, okay, fine, where are the improvements required for them to do a better job for their clients.
Can I just ask on that as well? You made a very good point, which we've all agreed with, is that you should view your offshore team members, there you are, Kirsty, thank you for that, as the same way you're onshore. However, they are offshore, and they can work in the same time zone as you, or they can work in a different time zone, so you can have whatever time zone that you want, but they are offshore. Now, what support should you expect from the company, the RPO company, around management and around sort of supporting people, even though on a day-to-day basis they work for their onshore counterparts? What kind of offshore support would they get?
Well, a lot of RPOs, have a structure in place, or most of them have a structure in place, which leads into. So it depends on the size of the team. So if their company is just having 1 or 2 staff members working for a respective agency, then they report into a team leader. There's when the person is onboarded, if they're rookies, then training and development. So there's UK geography training, basic culture training, understanding about the UK recruiting market. So that's the induction that happens. And then 2 is from the scoping perspective. So when the transition happens, that's where the management team is involved. That, okay, fine, these are 5 work activities that you're going to be working on. Let's start. So the first 3 months is when the handholding happens. So the team leader or the supervisor is involved in that process, working closely with the resource here and with the client to communicate effectively. And then that's exactly where the weekly reviews come into picture, engaging with the onshore counterpart. So it's mostly the supervisor or the senior management team that engages with the SMT offshore, talking about the progress. So you're looking at again a stage stage gates, as we call in our outsourcing world, that stage gate 1 is this, 2 is this, 3 is this, from the implementation perspective. And then from a day-to-day running basis, it's ensuring that, okay, fine, they're turning up on time, break schedules, doing their work, hitting the KPIs when we conduct the weekly reviews here, and if they need any support from offshore or onshore. And then you want to use this structure that we use, which is mainly around the identifying the gaps. So there can be a process gap which can be reviewed from the work that they're doing. So if it's a large team, and if a couple of people or more than 50% of the team is sort of making errors in certain area, then it is a process gap, very easy to identify. you talk about it to the client, and you review that. Okay, fine. Is the problem here? Is the problem onshore? Very easy to fix. Depending on the severity of the gap.
I mean, I think I like the idea that there is someone there and it's proactive, and there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than you would necessarily see from the UK or from.
Well, it's like, the clients of agencies, talking about that. All you do is, you're going to just find some CVs from the job board, but there's lots happening in the background. So it's precisely the same thing, that it's not just on, bums on seat model where here's your resource, you work with them, you manage them. No, there's so much happening, from hand-holding, management, reviewing, ensuring they're happy. So all those things,
and that's all included in the price, isn't it? That's all part of the price.
It is. It totally is.
I think leads us nicely onto the commercials, because I know that there are going to be.
We're running out of time. If people have got questions for Ketan, please put them in, and he will answer them. So go ahead.
So I know that people watching this are going to be thinking commercial arrangements. What kind of cost, Ketan, are people going to be looking at if they are utilizing an offshoring resource?
Sure. So, one, because it's offshore, it's almost half of the onshore costs. So that's one, and I'm sure everybody knows that. But you're looking at ballpark anywhere between 900 to 1500, sterling pounds per resource per month. It depends on the scope of work, level of experience, number of people you're deploying on your offshore teams. But that's the sort of broader base from the cost perspective.
And what sort of additional costs am I looking at on top of that? Because like LinkedIn, job boards, what kind of things would I be adding on top?
Well, given that it's a dedicated resource, working for you 8.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, it's essentially the same cost that you'd sort of incur if you employed somebody onshore. So job board access, telephony, anything that you'd give them to make sure that they're successful.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Just on that though, we've talked a lot about treating people the same, whether they're onshore or offshore, which I think is the right thing to do. But that doesn't necessarily, or it doesn't include the way in which you reward people, does it? I mean, you don't have to pay people in India the same commission scheme that you pay equivalent people in the UK, do you?
Well, we would love to have the same commission scheme, but no, it's different. So depending on, again, the desks that they're working on. So temporary, contract, permanent. So clients reward them, depending on the structure that they have internally.
Okay.
Can I ask one question as well?
Last one, Mike, because then we've got to move on to the first step.
I know we've got to move on, really, but I was having a discussion with someone yesterday, uses an offshore company, it's not yours, and he wanted to pay a small bonus to somebody who'd been doing really well. So he said, well, I know you obviously pay people internally, you've got your own internal structures for your offshore team, and we pay for access to those, obviously, but is it acceptable to say, well, that person who's working for me has done a really good job, so I want to give him an extra 100 quid or whatever, 50 quid or something, I don't know, whatever it was. Is that accepted, or is that frowned upon by RPO companies?
That's totally accepted, and companies should love it, because we love it here. Our clients do it on an average month. So here's the voucher, and go and have a meal with your friends, couple, whatever you want to do, just to make sure that, again, they are engaged and that they feel valued. So even if it's the smallest thing, they would reward them that here's a 15-pound voucher, go and have a pizza, or go to a nice restaurant. So it's a great gesture. Okay,
all right, I love that. Okay, so let's imagine somebody's watching this and thinking, I really like the sound of this, Ketan. It's my kind of vibe. What, as a business owner, what should be my first steps when I'm thinking about planning to use an offshore resource? What should I do, and sort of when should I engage someone to do it?
Well, you start with the objective that, what is my objective of outsourcing? So if precisely my objective is just building a database of candidates, then, it's the shared services model. I don't need a dedicated resource. But, if you're looking at this as a strategic initiative for your business, irrespective of the size, you start by, scoping out the kind of tasks that you need help with, scope of work. And then 2 is thinking about how much time and resources you'll be able to spare to make this work. Because offshore RPOs or offshore resources don't have a magic wand that they'll source 50 good candidates in a week, and you'll increase your fill rate by 30-40% straight away. It doesn't happen. You will have to invest that time and effort in making this work, right from training and development, knowledge transfer, and then treating them as a part of your team. So time is most imperative after scope of work.
Could I ask on that? So typically, how long would you suggest that someone should really need to commit to an offshore person before they can begin to see the benefits? I mean, we've said you can't just chuck vacancies at them. That's not really the good thing to do. And I know from my experience, you can't just say, I'll give it a go for a month then, because that doesn't work either. What period do you think is a reasonable, let's do it and assess what it comes back with, period for someone to take on offshore?
You're essentially looking at least 3 months, a quarter, to make it work. And then I would suggest don't start anything during the holidays, during the peak season, because when you evaluate the outcome of the offshore resources, you sent me 5 candidates or 10 candidates, none of them were active or nobody answered the call. But if it's just pure play resourcing, they're not phoning the candidates. So they wouldn't have a clue if these candidates are actively looking or not. And this is one of the reasons why it fails as well, Mike. So you outsource a CV sourcing activity, and then you expect those candidates to be looking, or the RPO to be knowing that, are these guys active? I wouldn't know because I haven't spoken to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I think we're coming to the end now. Now, I know that you wanted to do just a brief sort of summary on this based on the way that your clients have used RPOs.
Just very quickly, I think you can't ignore offshore. You might not take it. Fair enough. It's your choice. But I don't think you can ignore it. And clearly, if you're watching this video, you're not. I think you have to see people offshore the same way as you do onshore, treat them the same and invest in them in the same way. You're looking at a 3-month minimum period to find out, but it's not a lot of money in the great scheme of things. But what you are going to get is 3 things, which I think are over and above what you would get in the United Kingdom. The first thing is these people stay doing the same job longer. Whereas in the UK, been a resourcer for 6 months, 9 months, I want to move on now, I want to be a consultant or something. It's like, well, you just got you to be an effective resourcer and you want to move on now. Whereas people in India particularly will become really good resources and stay a really good resourcer for years. So you really get the benefit from your investment. The second thing, of course, is there's more choice. You get more people in India than you do in the United Kingdom. I'm not sure of the population of India, but I know it's a lot. I know it's big, right? So you get more choice. And then the third thing, it's cheaper. I mean, I quite frankly, I would use it if it was the same price, really, because I think you get a lot of benefits from it. But it is cheaper, about half price, roughly there or thereabouts. It seems to be the average. So for me, I think it's important to understand how it would work in your business. And if you're going to do it, to commit to it properly and work with, I'm not going to push. No one's going to have to sell on this show, as you know, Ketan, but someone professional like Ketan who could help you. Now, if you want to know more, I think the best thing to do is to just invite Ketan to connect on LinkedIn. He's not pushy, and that's not his way at all. So that'll be a good connection. And I believe you're bringing out a Idiot's Guide to Offshore fairly soon, aren't you, Ketan? Which will be available in the new year.
Yes.
And so when you connect, if you just say, send me the Idiot's Guide as soon as it's available, no doubt he will send it to you. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel very strongly that this is something that people really should be looking at least.
Fantastic. Okay, so in a second, Ketan, I'm going to come to you about the top tip that somebody should have when using offshore resources. But before then, Mike, let's talk about after Christmas. The first show back after we come back is going to be about testimonial videos.
Well, you should know because you'll be doing it. I'll be elsewhere. I won't be around on that day. However, you'll have ably supported by Peter Ames. There he is. Look. But you're the star, Kirsty. I want you to know that.
I'm always the star, Mike. I'm always the star.
It should be the Kirsty Ames show. I think we all know that. But now, let me just quickly on this testimonial videos. Massively important. We think 5 times more likely to be believed than a written equivalent, and therefore 5 times more powerful. And we know that certain people need proof that what you're saying you can do for them, you've done for somebody else like them, and a video testimonial will do that. But it's a lot harder to get really good testimonials out of people than you might think, and Kirsty's going to share all. So.
Yeah. And I think next year, particularly with what's potentially going to be happening with the economy, I hate to mention it, testimonial videos are going to be becoming so much more powerful because you're going to need to get new clients and you're going to be fighting more competition. So I'm very excited about that. But it's not all about me. We're here today with Ketan. So Ketan, I'm a business owner and I'm thinking I want to use offshore resources. What's the one thing that you suggest somebody does if they're going to do that?
Well, it's a mindset thing. So you have to be in that zone that this is my branch office, wherever it is, India, Philippines, South Africa, this is my office. I'm going to treat people working in that office exactly as I do, with my onshore, offices, be it in London, Manchester. So they are my team. So I'll devote enough time, resources, and then feedback, whatever is required to make sure that this is a success. So if you go with that mindset, there's no reason why, the arrangement would fail.
Fantastic. Thank
Great
you
tip.
so much. Thank you. Mike, do you want to send us out this year and with a goodbye to everybody?
Oh my goodness, yes, I'd like to do that. For starters, I'm wearing my Christmas jumper, as you can see. Yes. Ketan didn't get the memo, so he's not wearing his. Yeah, it's been a great year. I'm going to put a little post out next week to thank everyone for supporting us, and the viewing figures for this show are remarkable. People talk about podcasts all the time, and I look at the numbers they get on a podcast, and I think we bury that, but people don't see it in the same way that podcasting. But this show has been fantastic for us, and we just want to keep adding value to you guys out there. So thank you. All have a super, super Christmas, and I wish you all a very prosperous, healthy, and happy 2023.
Yeah. And thank you to Ketan for joining us today as well. Fantastic.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kirsty.
Ketan.
Thanks, Mike.
See you guys next year.